Hiya. So progress. I've really got stuck into the front end of the car, cleaned most of the paintwork off, to the point where I can start sanding it and flattening it, as you've probably seen on other videos. One of the issues I've had, and I've mentioned it a few times, is the amount of filler in the car and the hardness of the paint in some places. And as I previously said, I've gone over the car with the electric sander and taken off the top layers of paint down to the metal in a lot of places, but not wanting to put undue pressure on the car, on the bodywork, on the aluminium. I haven't gone too far, and there are a lot of spots where there's obviously low points in the aluminium, and that gives you this this paint that's left behind and isn't very easy to get off. Also, I've got filler here. Here I've already taken quite a lot out. There's been either a prang or something in the manufacturing early on, and the respray's been on top of that, and then you can see the various layers of paint in there, kind of hiding the original sins. So you've got the one of the original primers, which is the red, blue filler, tiny bit of the newer paint on top. So it kind of varies depending where you are on the car, but it's all fairly easy to take care of. And I think this applies to any job you do on a car. The first car, the Spitfire I had, really was my learning curve, as I said, and I used to spray up and repair panels on it all the time, mostly with P36 Isopon aluminium mesh tucked and attached at the back, and dodgy metal panels that I'd beaten up myself. I was 19, so no apologies there, but obviously I was doing something right, because I used to do it on the street or in my grandparents' garage in Withensea, and people walking by would quite often stop and ask if I could do bodyweight repairs on their cars, and I used to refuse, scared to death that I'd get it wrong somehow. So a couple of things here. One's a trusty drill. Obviously I don't want to be applying this right across the panel. I really feel some unevenness in this anyway, just by hand. So the first one is the what you saw as the blue spots, and rather than just rub at them, I'm just breaking the surface and just breaking down the surface of that a little bit, trying to keep off the aluminium as much as possible. And then so when I get back at it with the pad, what I really aim to get is as much of that paint off as possible, using a 120 grit on the pad and rubbing away at it. Don't want to rub hard, don't want to damage the metal. As I say, and I can feel ripples in the surface of this. There wasn't any filler on it particularly to start with, so I think, to be honest, in the future there might be. The other one is the filler. This is hard stuff. Whatever they used here is really difficult to get through. Certainly don't want to be hammer and chiseling it, although any other car I'd probably think about it. So what I've been doing is, again, scoring the surface. I haven't got my head down there and I'm not wearing a mask at the minute, but when I get really stuck into it I will be. It makes an awful lot of dust and it's a messy job. But I'm scoring the surface again with a brush. I'm using a brass brush because it's low impact, even when you reach into it, and it gives me a scored effect on the indented effect on the filler, and lets the sanding block get into it again. In some places I really add thick filler, I mean up to 5mm thick, on the front near side wing, and that made a big difference. In fact, at one point I used the small Dremel style wheel to really take thin layers off at a time, before finally getting it stuck in with the electric sander and then just by hand to tidy up. So I'll show you all that later, but what I'll do is I'll cut away, prepare this, then start rubbing an area and show you how it finishes up. So I've gotten through most of that. Perennial problem that we've all had this year is that the glass is fogging up the second you put a mask on. It's no different. I've got through most of that. Interestingly, we seem to have a proud point in the middle, and some raised pieces around the outside, raised bits around the outside. It's it is what it is. I'd really like to hear from somebody what the history of this car is. Quite interestingly, just here, let's see if we can see it. I'm pretty certain that this pencil mark that's just come through, well, I say pretty certain, who knows, has come from Aston when they first built the car. So as I've said, some things were as built originally. Almost seems a shame to be taking it back to flat metal. If the Aston guys got that right the first time, maybe I shouldn't have touched it, but I have. So somebody else gets that fun putting it right again in the future. I'm going to crack on with this area and come back to you later. Cheers.